If you want to be more productive and stop procrastinating, if you want to be better at reaching your goals, there's one really important thing we need to talk about. But hold on a second. Hello, I'm Shane from activegrowth.com, and there's one issue we really need to talk about when it comes to productivity, because a lot of advice I see about productivity seems to leave this out or forget about this, and it might be the most important thing that's preventing you from reaching your goals. To explain what this thing is, let me first quickly explain the elephant and rider model. This is a model of how the mind works that was proposed, I think, by Jonathan Haidt, and it goes like this. Your mind has an elephant and a rider. The rider is the rational part. That is where you make your long-term plans and where you make rational decisions. The elephant is your emotional and instinctual part, and there is often a conflict. So you might set out, the rider might say, you know what, I want to lose some weight because I'll feel better, it's healthier, I'll like myself better, it will be good for me. The elephant sees a cake and goes, I want cake, and the elephant wins because the elephant is way bigger and way stronger than the rider. This is basically exactly what happens with things like procrastination, right? Maybe in the morning, you make some plans that are rational, long-term, sensible plans, right? It makes sense to spend time working, it makes sense to be focused, it makes sense to do the right things. But then you get distracted and you feel powerless compared to these distractions. The elephant basically takes over. The problem is, if we don't recognize this kind of conflict in our minds, then we just end up blaming ourselves and we feel like, oh, I don't have enough willpower, I'm not good enough, and so on. Now, here's the thing. The reason I'm talking about the elephant and the rider is because there is a huge obstacle between us and achieving our goals. And it's a new obstacle. And it has a lot to do with the phone that you have in your pocket right now, or maybe in your hand right now, or on your desk in front of you. See, the thing is, you've probably noticed that very often when you're procrastinating, it has to do with your phone, it has to do with social media, it has to do with services like Facebook and Twitter and Netflix and Instagram and so on. If we're talking about productivity, we have to acknowledge the massive changes that have happened in our digital environment, even just in the last few years. You see, if you find yourself spending way too much time on social media and spending way too much time staring at your phone's screen, that is not entirely your fault. The thing is, even just 5 to 10 years ago, we had phones and distractions and so on, but these companies behind those distractions didn't have the power to manipulate our behavior that they have now. See, every successful social media platform, every app with many users nowadays has access to big data, which basically means that they have access to reams and reams of data about how we behave and what gets us hooked. And these apps, the most successful apps, have been and are continually being optimized in the most subtle ways to get and then keep our attention. And this is something we must acknowledge. This is not the same as it was even 3 or 4 or 5 years ago, right? The addictiveness of our distractions has risen exponentially. Even right now, as you're watching this video, have you been simply watching the content? Or have you been scrolling down the page to see what else is going on? Probably more than half of the people who started watching this video have already stopped at this point. Maybe you've switched to a different tab and you're only listening to my voice at this point. Or maybe the video is running, but you're also checking your phone, and maybe you've zoned out until now, maybe kind of guilt tripping you into paying attention again, right? Because you notice, oh my God, I was having 2 chat conversations while the video was playing in the background. This is basically insane, right? I mean, how come we can't spend a few minutes watching a video? But even though it's insane, it has become normal. And that's because these giant companies have become that good at getting us addicted. So one way in which our environment has changed in a way that's totally not in our favor is that it's not just the rider versus the elephant. It's the rider versus the elephant plus teams of data scientists with highly optimized apps all made to seduce the elephant. So what's the takeaway from all this? There are 3 main points that I think are important here. The first has to do with guilt, basically. I think it's important to acknowledge that this is not it's not that you have gotten lazier or that your procrastination habits have gotten worse or that you're too weak or something like that. It's that the environment around you has gotten much better at getting you and keeping you distracted. So I think, any time you spend kind of making yourself feel bad about these things, you've got to acknowledge what you're up against here. This is not the same world that we lived in even a few years ago. Number two, it's important to counteract these distractions, but not with willpower, because your willpower is simply not going to be enough. You might have heard that in general, willpower, it doesn't last very long. It's just not that great of a resource. So keep in mind that when you're facing these challenges, simply telling yourself, okay, I'm going to try harder, I'm going to do better somehow, this is not enough. This is not a sufficient solution, right? So just deciding I'm going to do better is not going to work here. And number three, the solutions that you should look for are in your environment and in systems. So when you look at whatever it is that keeps you distracted, whatever it is that keeps you procrastinating, that keeps you from being productive, don't think of, I'm going to solve this by trying hard to solve this. Think of, what can I do to change my physical environment and my digital environment, and what can I do to create systems that make it easy for me to overcome these distractions? This is the right frame of mind. That is where you can find solutions. So I'd love to hear what experiences you've had with distraction and procrastination and so on. And I'd love to know if what I'm saying here makes sense to you and resonates with you. Also, if you're watching this video while it's still new, I'm about to launch my new productivity course. So if you're interested in learning my exact system for keeping myself productive, check out the link below and you might still have a chance to join. All right, that's all. I'm looking forward to hearing your comments and questions. And of course, depending on what you'd like to know, I would love to make more content on this topic.